of Eric Garner, there was no obvious racial content there. And the 12-year-old child who was killed in Cleveland, well, the cop should have never been on the police department because he had emotional problems and things like this. They want to treat every one of these things like a single incident. And in so doing, what they want to do is remove the historical relationship that black people have to this country. Like we didn't get to this country because we decided 400 years ago they're going to discover the National Football League and we want to get a jump on it and get there early. The fact is that we were captured and brought here as captives, and that what is happening to us happens to us as a part of what happens to any captive population any place in the world. African people in this country are colonized. And what you will see is that when people are under colonial domination, colonial occupation, the state acts the same way. Whether it's mistaking a cell phone in New York for a gun and resulting in shooting Amadou Diallo 42 times, or whether it's mistaking a funeral in Afghanistan for some militants who they used to drone missiles to kill them. The fact is that it seems like their eyesight gets bad only when it comes to our community. They become emotionally disturbed only when it comes to killing our 12-year-old children. And that is something that we cannot tolerate. So I just think it's really important for us to contextualize what is happening to us as a colonial subject people. Because part of what is happening now is a new narrative that's being created that has to deal with the police because they can't run away from it. That's the only reason this discussion is happening. Because all around this country, hundreds of people, hundreds of demonstrations, perhaps more than 1,000 demonstrations have happened since the grand jury verdict came down from Mike Brown alone. And then on top of that, Eric Garner, the grand jury said it's all right to do that. You know that as bad as Darren Wilson is, that's a bad man, Darren Wilson. He's the one to whom Mike Brown looked like a demon. Did you read his testimony? It was like a demon. And that he felt like this 6'4", Darren Wilson felt like a 5-year-old holding on to Hulk Hogan. Throwing out these kinds of images of what have you, that we're all familiar with a big black man, right, who is so scary, and you're supposed to be able to do anything you want to do because they're big and black and scary. And of course, big black men are scary to some people, right? But they are not frightening to people who live in this community. And I just think that when we talk about Darren Wilson, we also have to remember that it wasn't Darren Wilson that made the decision to leave Mike Brown's body on asphalt in 100-degree plus weather for 4.5 hours where it would just sit there and deteriorate. Darren Wilson didn't make that decision. It wasn't Darren Wilson who paid himself more than $500,000 as a reward for killing Mike Brown. White folks got together and gave him that money. It wasn't Darren Wilson who put a bracelet on the arms of all the police in Ferguson saying, "I am Darren Wilson." He didn't do that. That was the whole police department that did that. And I think it's really important for us to understand and contextualize what it is that we're looking at. We're not looking at a series of incidents. We're looking at something that happens to us in the aggregate. And that and we've seen some of the things happen to us in this city. Of course, the exact Mike Brown situation, if you will, happened the exact Ferguson almost, when they gunned down Tyrone Lewis in 1996, 3 blocks from here. Murdered him with impunity. And then, of course, they had an uprising there too, in this very room that we're sitting in right now. On November 24th, 18 years ago last month, the police department attacked this building. Attacked this building 300 strong, not just the local cops, right? But they had highway patrol, they had county sheriffs, and they had local policemen from around the county that attacked this building. And they attacked this building. The mayor was quite clear on it, that they were concerned about what it was we were going to say about the grand jury. About the grand jury freeing James Knight and Sandra Minor for murdering 18-year-old Tyrone Lewis, 18-year-old Tyrone Lewis, 18-year-old Mike Brown, 12-year-old Tamir Rice in Cleveland. I mean, and they just murdering our children. In addition to the murder, We're confronted with the fact that America has the largest prison population on earth. With 350 million or so people, there are more people in prison in this country than there are in China with more than 1 billion people. And guess who the majority of the 2.3 million who are in prison? African people, who make up, they say, 12 or 13% of the population, yet we're the majority of the people in these prisons. And so there's something horribly wrong. But you can't talk just about the police question, because you're talking about the education problem. What's happening to our children in these schools? Terrorism happens in the school. There's a case over in Tampa right now where a teacher snatched the purse from this 17-year-old student. The child snatched the purse back, and then the police came up behind the 17-year-old child and slammed her twice. Once with her face hitting the edge of a desk and breaking a jaw in 2 places. They said they did it because they suspect that she had mace or something like that in her purse. Of course, there was nothing in her purse, right? But they do this with impunity. And they will do it with impunity until this community stands up. And right now, the country is on the back foot because it's having to deal with uprisings all around this country based on the relationship that we have with the police. And so now they're changing the narrative. So the question now is not something happening to black people, and it is happening to us, right? They even get these poor, wounded families, have their daughters and their mothers and things like this to come out and say, please don't be violent, and oh, racism has nothing to do with it, right? You've seen them on television saying this. Here are people that the media would pay no attention to in the past. Before their loved ones was murdered, they couldn't get access to the media. They couldn't get access to Chris Cuomo on CNN. They couldn't get access to Don Lemon with his lying ass on CNN, right? So now, these people who were no one, sometimes living in housing projects and things like this, they've been raised up to superstardom as long as you say the right thing, right? And the right thing is, we don't want no violence, right? And and it's not racial. And now they're raising this thing now. You hear this narrative that it's really America is healing itself. So the demonstrations that you see going on everywhere is a process of America healing itself. And they bring these wounded families out and say, see the diversity, all the people who are marching and demonstrating, that shows it's not a racial question. America is healing itself. This is the new narrative. It's being orchestrated from the White House by Barack Hussein Obama and his water carrier Al Sharpton, right? These are the forces who are raising this kind of politics to confuse the community and to prevent the community from fighting for power over our lives so that these kinds of things cannot happen to us with impunity. So what we're saying is, first of all, that Anthony Holloway should have come over here. But this mayor and this government established a tradition early on. First of all, with secret conference calls. Remember that? Where they were having secret meetings, where he called secret meetings with the city council, violating, what do they call it, the Sunshine Law and what have you. That made the news. And so now Holloway, he's having his own secret group of people who he's going to meet with. He can't come to face the people. He will meet behind closed doors. First it was going to be in the police department, at the police station. Subsequent, I think somebody has pulled his coat and said that doesn't look too good. So now they're setting up their own meetings, and it's going to be at Carter G. Woodson Library, I'm told, on Tuesday, the 6th of this, was that the 6th? At 6 o'clock on the 9th. And I think we ought to be there too, with picket signs, outside. I think that the whole issue is, guess who he's got on the list? In addition to Reverend Sykes here, who, he's got Darrell Roussan, who made his career, and I want to say it because I think the line has to be drawn someplace, who made his career as a reformed crackhead, and we want every crackhead to reform, so I'm not denouncing him for being a reformed crackhead, right? We want every crackhead to reform. As a bankrupt reformed crackhead by selling this community out. by intervening in a struggle that we had initiated, demanding that after the murder of Tyrone Lewis, that they had to end the public policy of police containment and then initiate a public policy of economic development for this community. Rusan carried their water. Rusan broke it up by declaring that we didn't need any kind of economic development until they got rid of crime. In other words, turn loose the police that killed Tyrone Lewis. And he's got the Holloway, his own administrative assistant. He's meeting with his own administrative assistant as part of the group. He's got the chief, the head of the police union, the organization that had to be defanged by Goliath Davis when he became the chief of police in this city. He's got a whole array of forces that are tied to the city. He's got the mayor's assistant in charge of the Negroes as a part of the group that he's going to be meeting with. He's got members of the neighborhood association that function as cheerleaders for the police department in this city. These are the kinds of forces that he's meeting with, as opposed to stepping forward to meet with the people as we call. And so I guarantee you, they will put together a meeting. They will put together a public meeting, but it's going to be a public meeting on their terms and not on the terms of the community, where they have to answer the kinds of questions that demand answering at this point. So we have some problems with how Holloway did that. And I want to say that there are people in this room. One brother arrested and stopped 23 times this year by the police. 23 times. Got a ticket once. And the only reason he got a ticket this time is because when he was stopped, there was a highway patrol officer next to him who wanted to know why the hell you're stopping him, right? And they had to do that. There are other people who've had experiences. One brother in this room who was stopped when he pulled up to this center right here. A white woman was driving the car.